Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Bon matin à toutes et à tous. C'est un très, très grand plaisir pour moi d'être parmi vous aujourd'hui. And I really want to thank you, Paul, for your kind introduction. It has been so nice to spend some time with you, your wife, Monica, your neighbors here in your amazing community of Markham, Unionville. Your outstanding commitment to public service, 28 years with the York Regional Police, is inspiring. It is exactly what this community needs, and I cannot wait, Paul, to be with you in Ottawa. And I want to thank you, Danny and Maggie, behind us, for being such wonderful hosts this morning. Let me also acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee. So, early learning and childcare. This has long been a feminist issue. Canadian feminists have been fighting for universal early learning and childcare for more than half a century. I remember so clearly my own mother and her friends when I was a toddler in northern Alberta taking up the call to action of the Royal Commission on the Status of Women more than 50 years ago, calling for the federal government to build a universal early learning and child care system across the country. So women have been fighting for this. Canadian feminists have been fighting for this for more than half a century, for nearly my whole life. And now the COVID-19 pandemic has exposed to everyone in the whole country, feminists and everyone else, something that feminists, that women, that mothers have known for a very long time. Early learning and childcare is, on top of everything else, an economic issue. Without early learning and childcare, parents, usually mothers, cannot work. The closing of schools and childcare centers because of the COVID pandemic drove women's participation in the Canadian labor force down to its lowest level in over 2 decades. So early learning and childcare is really important to me, both as a working mother and as someone who spends quite a lot of time thinking about the nation's finances and the Canadian economy. Early learning and childcare is such an important part of our economic strategy because it delivers a jobs and growth hat trick. It allows both mothers and fathers to work, increasing our labor force. That will drive economic growth and make life more affordable for Canadian families. Early learning and childcare also creates good, well-paid jobs for early learning educators who happen to be mostly women. And of course, an excellent early learning and childcare system across Canada is going to help us all to raise an outstanding generation of young Canadians, of children who get the very best possible start in life. Depuis le mois de juillet, nous avons signé des accords avec 8 juridictions afin de réduire les frais de services d'apprentissage et de garde des jeunes enfants par 50% d'ici la fin de l'année prochaine et à $10 par jour en moyenne d'ici 2025-2026 au plus tard. Cela signifie que 47% des enfants canadiens ayant moins de 6 ans et leurs parents auront désormais accès aux services de garde abordables et de haute qualité dont ils méritent. Since July, our government has signed agreements with 8 provinces and territories to reduce early learning and childcare fees by 50% by the end of next year and to $10 a day on average by 2025, 2026, or sooner. This means that 47% of Canadian children under 6 and their parents will now have access to the affordable and high-quality childcare they deserve. It is such a landmark. And these are provinces and territories across the country, from coast to coast. We have done deals with NDP governments. We've done deals with Conservative governments. We've done deals with Liberal governments. We've done deals in the north, and we've done deals in the south. We have really shown that it is possible today in Canada to build the universal, high-quality, and affordable early learning and childcare that Canadian parents, Canadian women, and Canadian children need and deserve. So that is why it was absolutely heartbreaking for me to see Erin O'Toole's Conservatives pledge in their platform to dismantle these historic agreements on affordable and accessible, high-quality early learning and childcare. This Conservative plan for childcare is disrespectful to working mothers. It is also economic nonsense, and it will set back our country's recovery from the COVID recession. As I travel around the country, I am hearing over and over from our businesses, from our small businesses, that they need workers. And so many mothers across our amazing country want to work, but they also want to know that their children are getting outstanding care and learning while their parents are working. That is what our government is totally committed to providing and delivering for Canadians. Childcare is essential to our recovery from the pandemic. It is feminist policy. It is good economic policy. It will make life more affordable for young families. It will drive economic growth, and it will ensure that Canada comes roaring back. I am now so pleased to introduce someone who firmly believes that all parents, all mothers, and all children across our amazing country deserve and must get access to high quality and affordable early learning and childcare. Our leader, Justin Trudeau.
Merci Christia. Bonjour tout le monde. Avant de commencer, je veux dire quelques mots à propos de la situation extrêmement préoccupante en Afghanistan. Hier soir, je me suis entretenu avec le ministre Garneau. Il m'a donné une mise à jour à propos de notre collaboration avec nos alliés. Les ministres Garneau, Sajjan et Mendicino sont en constante communication et ils collaborent de près avec nos partenaires. Earlier this morning, I had another briefing with officials. Over the last weeks, we have had 9 flights out of Afghanistan, including having fully evacuated all of our diplomatic officials. We will honor the sacrifices of Canadians, our armed forces, diplomats, journalists, and civil society made over the past years. We're also working closely with the U.S. and looking at how we can remove more people in the coming days and weeks. And we're working with our allies on what Canada, as part of the international community, can do to stabilize the situation, protect civilians, and put an end to the violence. This includes taking leadership by bringing Afghans to safety in Canada, with hundreds of people having already arrived. In the coming days, a number of the Afghan families that arrived weeks ago will be ending their COVID-19 quarantine and able to start their new lives across the country. One of our priorities in Afghanistan has always been the safety of women and girls. This is something I've discussed a number of times with Minister Maryam Mosef. Maryam is herself an extraordinary woman leader from Afghanistan who understands just how precarious the situation is. She continues to work tirelessly across government and with partners to improve the situation. I also spoke last night with former U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, who shares our concern for Afghan women and girls. She welcomed our efforts and urged Canada to continue our work. Governments, international organizations, and civil society must continue to work together to support women and girls in Afghanistan. The Afghan people need the world to stand with them, and that is what Canada will continue to do. My friends, it's so good to be back here in Markham. First off, thank you, Chrystia, for that introduction and for everything you do. As Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, you've made incredible progress for families. And as a mom and Liberal candidate, I know you're ready to keep going for parents everywhere. A big shout out as well to Paul Chang, our outstanding Liberal candidate for here in Markham Unionville. As a former police sergeant, as someone who brings together the diverse communities that make Markham vibrant, as a dad and as a grandfather, you're the kind of leader that Markham Unionville needs and deserves. And of course, thank you to Danny Ran and Maggie Juan for hosting us this morning in their beautiful home. It's families like you and everyone here with us today that we're fighting for. Mes amis, quand la pandémie a frappé, personne ne savait à quoi s'attendre. Beaucoup s'inquiétaient pour leurs enfants, leur emploi, leur communauté. Mais ce qu'on savait par contre, c'est que les Canadiens étaient capables de travailler ensemble pour s'aider les uns les autres. When this crisis struck, Canadians stood together. I heard from Mary Ng about the great team at PCL Graphics from right here in Markham Unionville, who to do their part, they switched from their printing business to making PPE. That meant more face shields, masks, and screens for our frontline workers. And this is just one story of business leaders stepping up right here in the neighborhood amongst so many. Because time and time again, community after community, Canadians were there for each other. So don't stop now. If you haven't already, get vaccinated. And if you have, it's time to have more of those difficult conversations with friends who haven't, to encourage them to do their part to keep everyone safe. Because with our actions, we show what it means to be Canadian. And now, more than ever, that matters. En tant que gouvernement, et malgré l'incertitude durant la pandémie, on savait que la seule façon d'avancer, c'était de rester fidèle à nos valeurs. Dès le premier jour, on a promis d'être là pour vous. Et c'est ce qu'on a toujours fait, et c'est ce qu'on va continuer de faire. We came to Ottawa to build a government that would stand up for the middle class and people working hard to join it. That's why the very first thing we did was raise taxes on the wealthiest 1% so we could lower them for the middle class. That's why we lifted hundreds of thousands of kids out of poverty with the Canada Child Benefit. And that's the real change we focused on in this crisis, too. On a choisi d'être là pour les familles, avec la PCU. On a choisi de s'assurer que les provinces et les territoires aient les ressources nécessaires pour garder nos enfants en sécurité à l'école. Et c'est ça, les valeurs qu'on va continuer de défendre. A little earlier, I sat down with Danny and Maggie and all the parents here today. We talked about juggling work with kids, especially over the past 17 months. It's been tough. Maggie and Danny rely on childcare so they can both work full-time, but finding spaces for their two kids hasn't always been easy. For Dinah and Kenny, for Candy, and for other folks with us, the price of childcare was just too high. And they're not alone. Parents here in Markham and right across the country are in the same boat. It's not easy to build a career while helping kids do classes from the kitchen table. In fact, for far too many parents, mothers in particular, finding this balance has frankly been impossible. That has to change. If you're a parent, you deserve affordable childcare. You need affordable early learning and childcare. That's why a re-elected Liberal government will continue to support Canadian families by fighting for $10 a day childcare right across the country. Already, we've signed deals with provinces and territories to reach people right across Canada. For families in BC and Yukon, in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, in Nova Scotia, PEI, and Newfoundland and Labrador, this is real change you can count on. In real terms, it means cutting fees in half by the end of next year. $10 a day childcare in 5 years or less, and more quality spaces for everyone. Pour le Québec, on investit pour soutenir et améliorer le système qui est déjà en place. On investit pour créer 37 000 places de plus et améliorer les conditions de travail de nos éducatrices et de nos éducateurs. Je l'ai déjà dit, le Québec est un leader en matière de services de garde depuis bien longtemps. Et on le sait. Ce qui est bon pour les parents, c'est aussi bon pour l'économie. Avec notre plan, on va faire en sorte que tous les Canadiens puissent profiter des effets bénéfiques des services de garde comme au Québec. Et pour les communautés autochtones, notre plan de services de garde de haute qualité est guidé par les priorités des communautés autochtones. Parce que chaque enfant mérite d'avoir le meilleur départ possible. Le progrès qu'on a fait jusqu'à maintenant couvre près de la moitié de tous les enfants de 6 ans et moins au pays. Ça veut dire que près de la moitié de toutes les familles canadiennes qui veulent des services de garde et d'apprentissage vont y avoir accès à un prix abordable. Affordable childcare for millions of families. Hundreds of thousands of people who can get back into the workforce, mostly moms. Tens of thousands of new quality childcare spaces across the country. That's real progress in just a few months. So why stop there? If all provinces sign on to our plan, as we expect they will, we will create 250,000 new quality childcare spaces across the country to build a system that will last for generations. Unfortunately, as we were all reminded yesterday, families can't rely on the Conservative Party's approach. They're promising backwards Stephen Harper-era policies that won't create a single childcare spot in Ontario or in any other province or improve the quality of childcare anywhere across the country. Parents can't afford to move backwards. We can't afford for the Conservative Party of Canada to take us back. We need to move forward for everyone. I know you deserve affordable, quality childcare, and we have the plan and the commitment to make that happen. I have to once again thank our extraordinary Minister of Finance, the first woman Minister of Finance in the history of this country, and our Deputy Prime Minister, Chrystia Freeland, who led the charge on putting this into Budget 2021, on having heard not just as Liberals from stakeholders across the country, from families across the country who knew that it is time to build a childcare program that supports Canadians across the country, but also heard clearly from business leaders, big businesses, small businesses who've understood through this pandemic that the time for national universal childcare is here. So if you agree, stand with us. Have your say. We've had your back, and now it's time to hear your voice. Les Canadiens ont travaillé trop fort pour retourner à l'austérité et les résultats ratés des années Harper. Les Canadiens ont travaillé trop fort pour revenir en arrière avec le Parti conservateur. Couper le soutien aux familles durant la pandémie. Permettre à leurs députés de voter contre le droit des femmes de choisir. Rendre les armes d'assaut légales à nouveau, c'est ça le Parti conservateur, un retour en arrière. On childcare, just like on so many other things that matter to you, this election is about choosing to move forward. And yes, this is a choice, because just look at the track record of the other parties. The last time a Liberal government brought forward an affordable childcare plan, The NDP and the Conservatives worked together to stop it. We can't let that happen again. That's why I'm asking you to vote for real, progressive leadership, for good childcare, for strong health care, for affordable homes, for a clean environment. Whether you mail in your ballot or head to the polls yourself on September 20th, make your voice heard. Have your say, and together, let's move forward for everyone. Merci tout le monde. Je suis content de prendre les questions des médias maintenant.
Beaucoup, M. Trudeau. On va commencer la période de questions de 20 minutes. Une question, un suivi. One question, one follow-up. Starting with Mia Rabson, CP.
Good morning. We've heard for weeks that veterans have been trying to get the IRCC and Global Affairs to work with them to help get Afghan interpreters back. They have not had any success. They're suggesting that they need to start sending planes themselves in order to bring them back. What is taking so long, and how are you going to cut the red tape to actually get them here?
The Canadian government has, over the past many weeks, been focused on bringing Afghans to Canada, on resettling Afghan refugees, on making sure all those who have fought alongside Canadians for a better future Afghanistan remain safe and protected. We will continue, as we have continued, to work with partner organizations, with veterans groups, with Canadians from coast to coast to coast on resettling up to 20,000 Afghan refugees. The challenge right now is the situation on the ground. We are there, we are working with our allies to ensure that we are bringing as many people out of Afghanistan as possible. Of course, much depends on the safety and security situation on the ground, and we are doing absolutely everything we can to bring people to safety and to ensure that our allies do the same.
You're here this morning talking about childcare in a province that you have not yet signed a childcare deal with. Ontario suggesting that they're open to a deal, but they want recognition for what they've done, like full-day kindergarten. Are you open to recognizing that, and what does that actually mean for a deal, and how close are you?
We are very confident that the hard work we've been doing with Ontario and indeed other provinces across the country is going to lead to affordable, high-quality childcare for Ontarians and indeed for people across the country. As was said, we've reached childcare agreements in provinces and territories that cover almost half of all Canadian families, and we are very optimistic we're going to be able to continue to move forward and build a truly high-quality, national, affordable childcare system for families, for moms, for kids to have the chances to start, but also for better work conditions and pay for early childhood educators across the country, because we know how important this is. We've heard from advocates, from families across the country, how important it is to get affordable childcare spaces. Cutting childcare bills in half by next year across the country is something that everyone wants to see. And we are very confident that our hard work is going to get there here in Ontario and right across the country. That's why it's so inexplicable that Aaron O'Toole and his Conservatives are deciding to revert back to failed Stephen Harper-era policies of tax cuts that will not create a single childcare space, that will not ensure quality and good working conditions for the early childhood educators, that will not ensure that families can actually give those kids the opportunities they need while they re-engage in the workforce. It's absolutely unbelievable. Well, unfortunately, it's all too believable that they would actually take that approach, and it just makes the choice even more clear. For families and for a growing economy, we need to move forward with childcare now, and that's exactly what the Liberal Party of Canada is doing.
Bonjour, M. Trudeau, Louis Blouin de Radio-Canada. Vos places en garderie à 10 $ ne se concrétiseront pas pour beaucoup de Canadiens avant plusieurs années. Le chef conservateur, lui, propose un crédit d'impôt qui s'appliquerait dès maintenant. Vous ne pensez pas que les Canadiens, les Ontariens préféreraient plutôt avoir de l'aide maintenant pour les aider à couvrir ces coûts-là?
Je pense que les Canadiens comprennent très bien que pour bâtir un système abordable et de qualité, ça va prendre un peu de temps pour former les éducatrices pour investir dans les places. Et c'est exactement ce qu'on est en train de faire avec les provinces et territoires. On a vu au Québec que ça a pris 25 ans jusqu'à maintenant pour établir le système qu'on a maintenant. Et même à ça, avec l'investissement qu'on est en train de faire, on va pouvoir créer 37 000 places de plus au Québec pour aider les familles qui sont toujours à la recherche de places. Les Canadiens d'un bout à l'autre de ce pays ont besoin de places en garderie à des prix abordables et c'est ça qu'on n'a pas. Mais effectivement, on veut de l'aide immédiatement. C'est pour ça que chaque province qui a signé cet accord s'engage à couper en moitié les coûts immédiatement dans l'année à venir pour les parents qui envoient leurs enfants en garderie. Ça va faire une grosse différence, une différence de plusieurs milliers de dollars, particulièrement ici en Ontario, s'ils s'engagent avec notre plan. Alors, nous sommes très, très confiants que les parents comprennent bien que de bâtir un système avec plus de place, ça va servir bien plus que des crédits d'impôt qui ne créeront aucune place en garderie pour les familles qui en ont tant de besoin.
Je veux revenir sur la question de la vaccination obligatoire que vous défendez. Le secrétariat au Trésor dit, écoutez, les gens, les fonctionnaires qui ne veulent pas se faire vacciner vont pouvoir continuer à travailler, se faire dépister. On a l'impression que c'est exactement la même position que les conservateurs. Est-ce que vous jouez sur les mots pour essayer de marquer des points? Expliquez-moi ce qui distingue votre position de celle des conservateurs.
Comme on a dit, ce que les fonctionnaires au Conseil du Trésor ont dit était erroné. La réalité, c'est que nous sommes très, très clairs que les fonctionnaires fédéraux doivent se faire vacciner. Nous allons travailler avec les syndicats, avec tous les partenaires pour s'assurer que ce soit fait. Et c'est une position extrêmement différente du Parti conservateur. Ce serait merveilleux si les conservateurs d'Aaron O'Toole prenaient la même position que nous, que de mandater les vaccinations de façon obligatoire pour la fonction publique, pour tout le monde qui embarque dans un avion ou un train. Ça serait une très bonne chose. Malheureusement, ils n'ont pas cette position-là. Ils ne sont pas là pour défendre la sécurité des Canadiens. Nous sommes sans équivoque. Les fonctionnaires vont devoir se faire vacciner.
You've said throughout the pandemic that you're listening to health officials. They are now warning that politicizing vaccines during an election could be dangerous. Do you think it is responsible to turn vaccine mandates into a wedge issue?
I think Canadians expect their political parties and indeed their government to keep them safe and protected. And the best way to keep everyone safe and protected, the best way to get through this pandemic is for everyone to get fully vaccinated. That's why every time I'm at a microphone during this campaign and beyond, I will continue to tell people to go get vaccinated if you haven't already. It is the way we get through this. And quite frankly, all political leaders should be exactly as unequivocal about it. Instead, you get the Conservatives refusing to say whether or not all their candidates even are vaccinated. That's ridiculous. We see the Conservatives saying that they will roll back our decision to make sure that all public servants get vaccinated, all federal public servants get vaccinated, and indeed that anyone boarding a train or a plane will be fully vaccinated. That's our position, and the other parties really should take that position as well, because that's what is going to keep Canadians safe.
U.S. President Joe Biden is expected to at least suggest that Americans get a booster shot 8 months after they completed their first round. Will Canada follow suit?
Canada will follow the best advice of our medical professionals, of our National Advisory Council on Immunization, on the best science in terms of how to keep Canada and Canadians safe. As we have from the beginning, we have followed the instructions and the guidelines by our health professionals, and that will continue. I can say, however, that we have a supply of vaccines adequate to vaccinate everyone in Canada who's eligible fully, and we have also secured agreements with Pfizer and Moderna for booster shots in the coming months and years as they prove necessary. So Canadians be confident that we have the supply necessary for whatever the recommendations that our health professionals give us. Comme on a fait depuis le début, nous allons suivre les recommandations de nos experts en santé, publique, nos professionnels, nos docteurs, nos médecins, nos chercheurs, pour guider dans les réflexions que nous allons prendre par rapport à la vaccination. Nous avons au Canada assez de vaccins pour tout le monde. Nous avons aussi des accords avec Pfizer et Moderna pour des boosters dans les mois et les années à venir s'il s'avère être nécessaire. Mais pour la décision de si et quand ils vont être nécessaires, on va se fier aux experts.
Good morning, Mr. Trudeau. Marika Walsh with the Globe and Mail. Yesterday, you said your government and your party have been working for weeks on this vaccine mandate, but you have not released any details on how it would be forced, how you would ensure it actually is mandatory. So how would you do it? The NDP said they would follow the discipline process of collective agreements. What specifically would a re-elected Liberal government do to enforce a mandatory vaccination program?
We have made the decision that federal public servants need to be fully vaccinated. That is something that we're also applying to everyone who gets on a plane or a train in the coming months in Canada. That's a decision that we're making in order to keep Canadians safe, in order to put an end to this pandemic crisis in Canada. And in order to do that, we will be working with the collective bargaining agents, with the unions, with the various employers within the public sphere, the federal sphere, to ensure that we move forward. But the bottom line is, if anyone who doesn't have a legitimate medical reason for not getting fully vaccinated chooses to not get vaccinated, there will be consequences. Nous avons pris la décision d'assurer que toute la fonction publique fédérale et que tout le monde qui voudrait embarquer dans un train ou dans un avion dans les mois à venir soit pleinement vacciné. C'est comme ça qu'on va protéger les Canadiens, c'est comme ça qu'on va en finir avec cette pandémie pour de bon. Nous allons travailler avec la fonction publique, avec les syndicats et avec nos partenaires dans les secteurs réglementés par le fédéral pour s'assurer qu'il y ait des conséquences pour quiconque ne voudrait pas se faire vacciner et qui n'a pas une bonne raison médicale de l'être.
That doesn't explain what the consequences are, but I have to move on to another question from my colleagues in Ottawa. Again, yesterday you said that the government has been working for months on this plan to bring Afghan interpreters and fixers out of the country. If you've been working on it since May, how do you explain to them that it took the government another 3 months to actually get flights going? Why did it take so long?
We have been working with locals on the ground, with our consular staff, with our partners in civil society in Afghanistan and around the world to get people to safety with the approach of the Taliban. Obviously, the situation right now is extremely fluid. The Taliban has taken control of approaches to the airport, which is making it extremely difficult for people to get to the airport in order to get out. And that is something that we continue to work on. We have had that approach. We're actually today and tomorrow seeing the first families that we repatriated weeks ago able to actually get out across the country, finishing their COVID quarantine. We will continue to do absolutely everything we can, and we have said we're going to be welcoming 20,000 Afghan refugees to be able to resettle in Canada, because we know that doing our part for the future of Afghans is something that all Canadians are committed to.
Good morning, Ashley Burke, CBC News. Mr. Trudeau, can you just tell us, you mentioned there will be consequences. What are those consequences? And on that topic, what role did you, any of your cabinet, or any of your political staff have in the removal of a letter from the government's website yesterday during a federal election that the Conservatives were using to argue that you have a similar stance or policy when it comes to what to do with unvaccinated federal workers, those who do not want to get vaccinated?
That letter was erroneous and didn't reflect government policy, so it was brought down by the public servants. But it's interesting to see the Conservatives trying to say that they have the same position as us. It would be great if they had the same position as us. It would be good for Canadians if they did, because our position is all federal public servants need to get vaccinated, fully vaccinated. And anyone who embarks upon a train or a plane in the coming months will have to be fully vaccinated as well. That is our position. We are unequivocal about it. The Conservative Party is not. They don't think we should be protecting Canadians that way. They won't even say whether or not all their candidates are fully vaccinated in this election. There is a clear choice Canadians will get to make in this election about how we end this pandemic and how we build back better, including with important economic and social programs like childcare. And I'm looking forward to Canadians making that choice.
Did you have any role, or any political staff have any role in that removal of that letter, or your cabinet? And on another topic, your foreign affairs minister yesterday said that Canada is going to wait and see if it will recognize the Taliban as a legitimate government. This is a terrorist organization that's harbored al-Qaeda. It oppresses women. What are you waiting to see?
Look, Canada has no plans to recognize the Taliban as the government of Afghanistan. When they were in government 20 years ago, Canada did not recognize them as a government. They have taken over and replaced a duly elected democratic government by force. And as you point out, they are a recognized terrorist organization under Canadian law. Our focus right now is on getting people out of Afghanistan, and the Taliban need to ensure free access to people to get to the airport. We will continue to work with our international partners to put pressure on them to do just that and to secure a future for people in Afghanistan. Nous n'avons aucun plan de reconnaître les talibans comme gouvernement de l'Afghanistan. On ne les a pas reconnus, le Canada ne les a pas reconnus il y a 20 ans quand ils étaient au pouvoir en Afghanistan. Ils ont pris le pouvoir par la force d'un gouvernement dûment élu et sont reconnus pour être un organisme terroriste. Alors les talibans ne seront pas reconnus par ce gouvernement. Nous exigeons qu'ils assurent le libre passage des gens qui veulent quitter vers l'aéroport et nous allons travailler avec nos partenaires à l'international pour continuer de mettre la pression pour protéger le peuple afghan.
Hi, Prime Minister. Mercedes Stevenson from Global News. You're talking about bringing refugees from Afghanistan, and you keep using the 20,000 number. Those were already existing spots in the stream, and they deal with Afghans who were already outside of Afghanistan. So I'm wondering, considering in the last election you promised 40,000 Syrian refugees, if you will create new spots for Afghan refugees who are currently on the ground, and will you be requiring people to show documentation to board the planes, or will you do what the Americans are doing and just allow people to get on?
Because we are talking about resettlement, we need to know who these people are as they get on the planes, but we have indicated that we are looking forward to accepting as many Afghan refugees as possible. The 20,000, 21,000 number is one that we've been talking about, but we know there may be a need to do more, and what we've seen from Canadians, like we saw with the Syrian refugees back in 2015, Canadians are willing to open their hearts, their homes, their communities to welcome people fleeing from violence. Just as we saw what happened under a Conservative government around Syrian refugees, it was the Liberals that welcomed in 40,000 Syrian refugees that have made a huge contribution over these past 5-6 years to Canadian society. We will be there to do exactly the same for Afghans, particularly given the level of connection and sacrifice that so many Canadians have made for the benefit of Afghan people.
Sir, I'm not sure you're aware of this, but the forms that they're required to fill out can only be filled out on a computer with internet. Most Afghans don't have that, and going to an internet cafe to fill out documents that have the Canadian flag on them right now could get people killed. So I'm wondering if you're willing to revisit that policy, and I also want to ask you about the Gurkhas that your government left behind who are guarding the embassy. They're at the airport. They want to board a plane. Will you prioritize them?
As I said, I had a briefing this morning where we addressed both of those issues directly. I have been assured by immigration officials that every flexibility is being given to enable people who can't fill things out online to be able to transmit their information. There are phone calls, there are ways of reaching out to people to help them on this. And indeed, people we have begun to engage with, they will continue to be our clients, our focus over the coming months, whether they remain in Kabul, whether they make their way to a safe third country outside. We will continue to work with them in order to bring them to Canada and to ensure that it's done in as efficient, as rapid and safe a way as possible. In regards to the Gurkhas, as you well know, Mercedes, the Gurkhas are actually not Afghan citizens. They are Nepalese and Indian in their citizenship, so they don't qualify for the special immigration measures, but they have been there to support Canadians, which is why we've worked with the company and with others to help them evacuate. I know a number of them have already been airlifted to safety, and we will continue to work to make sure that we're fulfilling our obligations to everyone who's been there for us over time.
Oui, bonjour, Catherine Lévesque, la presse canadienne. Mes deux questions étaient en fait pour Mme Freeland, si vous le permettez. Je vais vous donner une pause, M. Trudeau. Bonjour, Mme Freeland. Je voulais revenir sur l'annonce du jour et vraiment essayer de tenter de comprendre pourquoi le gouvernement fédéral n'a pas encore une entente avec l'Ontario en ce moment pour les garderies. Vous êtes proche de Doug Ford. Est-ce que vous êtes intervenu à ce sujet-là et où en sont les négociations?
Merci pour la question. Et je veux commencer en constater une chose que le Québec et le système au Québec a démontré. Et je vais répondre sur l'Ontario, mais c'est une question en français, alors je veux souligner une chose très importante. La question d'impact économique d'un système de garderie n'est pas aujourd'hui au Canada une question théorique, une question abstracte. L'exemple du Québec démontre concrètement que c'est un programme qui donne des très, très forts résultats économiques. Et c'était démontré par beaucoup des économistes au Québec. Et je veux vraiment souligner cette réalité canadienne. Concernant l'Ontario, on a eu, et je veux souligner aussi le rôle que joue mon cher collègue Ahmed Hussein. Nous travaillons, moi, le Premier ministre et Ahmed, en étroite collaboration avec les provinces et les territoires. On a eu des très concrètes conversations avec l'Ontario. L'Ontario a partagé son perspective, ses données, et le Canada a partagé notre perspective. La chose importante du savoir pour les Ontariens, c'est que l'allocation du fédéral à l'Ontario est 10,2 milliards de dollars en 5 années. Alors, c'est une grande contribution parce que l'Ontario est une grande province. Ce sont des conversations, des négociations, et on a déjà conclu 8 négociations qui sont très, très détaillées. Quand le fédéral donne beaucoup d'argent, je pense que chaque Canadien veut que le fédéral fait son travail, que ce ne sont pas les chèques en blanc, que c'est vraiment un accord qui donnera aux citoyens ce qu'on veut créer, et c'est un système d'apprentissage. Alors, ce sont vraiment des négociations très, très détaillées. On a fait du progrès avec l'Ontario. On n'a pas fini, mais je suis très, très optimiste que ce sera possible. Et je veux aussi souligner une chose très importante. Pour notre gouvernement, la question des garderies, ce n'est pas une question partisane. C'est une question de livrer la marchandise pour les gens. Et je pense que le fait qu'on a réussi en concluant des accords avec le Manitoba, le Saskatchewan, ce sont des gouvernements assez conservateurs, mais on a conclu des accords. Et pour cette raison, je suis convaincue que ce sera possible avec l'Ontario et aussi avec l'Alberta.
Donc, En suivi, est-ce que vous diriez que vous êtes près d'une entente avec le gouvernement de l'Ontario? Et je me permets juste de revenir sur le commentaire que M. Trudeau vient de faire sur la reconnaissance des talibans comme gouvernement. Là, M. Trudeau a dit que ce ne serait pas le cas, mais la question avait été posée hier à M. Garneau et à M. Trudeau, justement. On n'avait pas eu de réponse claire. Je me demandais, vous, comment ça vous a fait finalement... Qu'est-ce que vous en pensiez comme féministe, justement, du fait que votre gouvernement hésitait à dire que les talibans pourraient être reconnus comme gouvernement?
Alors, pour conclure avec l'Ontario, oui, on est prête à conclure un accord. On a travaillé très, très fort, même vendredi, samedi. On a eu des discussions très fructueuses et on est absolument prête à les continuer. Et je dois dire absolument franchement, je suis très, très optimiste. Ce sera absolument possible de conclure des accords avec les provinces et les territoires qui restent parce que je sais, c'est un système qui fonctionne. C'est une chose duquel l'économie canadienne a besoin. C'est une chose duquel les Canadiens ont besoin. Concernant les talibans, j'étais ici. J'ai entendu le Premier ministre. Comme toujours, le Premier ministre était très, très clair concernant la position du Canada et du Taliban. Et ce que le Premier ministre a dit, c'est une position que je partage complètement. Et vous avez posé une question très importante. Je pense que ce qui se passe maintenant en Afghanistan, c'est vraiment une tragédie. Et je suis contente que vous avez souligné la position des femmes, des filles en Afghanistan. C'est vraiment un moment tragique pour eux. Et c'est une des raisons pour lesquelles je suis très heureuse que le Canada fait son part et qu'en tant que pays, en tant que société, nous sommes prêts à accueillir ici, chez nous, les courageuses leaders féministes d'Afghanistan. Merci.
Question to the Prime Minister. Theorgidis, Bloomberg News. Good morning. In addition to childcare, the Conservatives have proposed dozens of measures they claim will boost jobs or create jobs and boost growth. I'm wondering if you'd like to offer up a critique outside of the whole daycare issue of their program.
Well, I think you can't actually be serious about recognizing what sort of challenges Canadian families and our Canadian society has faced over the past 17 months without recognizing that women were and are harder hit by this crisis than others. And that's why it is so inexplicable that they don't recognize, I mean, perhaps for ideological reasons, they've always had issues with childcare over the past decades. Fine. But the results are in. It's not just a social program. It is an economic program. It is a program for growth, for women entering the workforce, for kids to get an opportunity to succeed to a maximal level with quality early learning and childcare. It is exactly the example of the kinds of things you need to do to counter the she session and turn it into a she-covery. Fact is, the Conservatives don't talk about that in their lengthy platform. They don't talk about feminism. They don't talk about the impact on women of this crisis. And that's why their decision, far from being an exception or something that we can blow past to reverse course on childcare, is actually at the heart of their misunderstanding of how to grow a strong economy. Over the first 5 years in government, we were able to create 1 million jobs and lift 1 million Canadians out of poverty. And the way you're able to do both of those things is by understanding how to help families across the country, how to create growth. That's exactly what we did before the pandemic. That's exactly what we did during the pandemic, and that's how we're going to recover. So the Conservatives warmed over Stephen Harper approach of boutique tax credits that actually don't help build the opportunities and the spaces and the support for families that they need is exactly the worst thing for the country as we try to rebuild a better future for us all from this pandemic.
In your opening statement this morning, you seem to be hinting that daycare is one reason why you should have a majority. You talked about 2006, I think, that was the reference. It's the one question I get most from my readers. Why should I care whether Justin Trudeau has a minority or majority? Wondering if you can help me answer that question.
This election is about ensuring that Canadians can be heard at a time of extraordinary consequence for our country. How we choose to finish this pandemic, how we choose to rebuild a better future for all Canadians. The decisions we take now as a government, as a parliament, will echo not just through the coming months and determine how well we do, but have consequences, whether it's on early learning and childcare, whether it's on fighting climate change, whether it's on strengthening our healthcare systems, or whether it's on investing in housing. The decisions we're taking now as a parliament, as a government, matter more than perhaps any time in living memory. And Canadians need to have their say. And the parliament that will be returned after September 20th, and the government that will be chosen after September 20th, will have a clear mandate from Canadians to finish the fight against this pandemic and to build a better future for everyone. That's what this election is about, and that's why the choice Canadians are facing is so important and so clear.
Bonjour, Boris Proulx du Devoir. Sur l'Afghanistan, toujours, vous avez beaucoup parlé de Kaboul, mais beaucoup d'Afghans qui ont collaboré avec le Canada sont du côté de Kandahar. J'aimerais savoir s'il y a un plan pour eux, et je comprends pour la collaboration avec un gouvernement taliban, vous rejetez ça, mais est-ce qu'il y aurait une collaboration possible avec les forces en présence talibanes pour aider le rapatriement de réfugiés?
Certainement, nous nous attendons à ce que les talibans permettent aux gens qui veulent quitter leur pays, le pays, de quitter. C'est la base de tout. Alors, nous allons continuer de mettre de la pression avec la communauté internationale pour s'assurer que les gens qui veulent quitter l'Afghanistan sous les talibans puissent quitter. C'est pourquoi on a signé une déclaration avec bien d'autres pays pour exiger exactement cela. Nous reconnaissons aussi que, oui, il y a des gens qui ont aidé les Canadiens, pas juste à Kaboul, mais partout au pays. Et nous allons être là pour les aider, qui sortent directement de Kaboul avec les vols qu'on espère pouvoir reprendre bientôt, selon la situation sur le terrain, mais aussi des gens qui vont arriver à fuir au Pakistan, au Tadjikistan ou ailleurs, vont pouvoir continuer de savoir que le Canada va être là pour eux et va faire tous les efforts pour les amener rapatriés ici au Canada chez eux.